says read them out loud. Who wants to read?
Okay. I'll read them if you want them dramatically read.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, so which one do you want me to read?
We're going to be here a
Scholar.
while.
Okay, I will read mine. All right, children,
It's
take a
story
seat.
time
Hang on,
with
put the
Locke.
bed down.
Yes,
That way,
it's
when
story
it's
time
night.
with me.
Wait, put the bed down.
Oh yeah.
Here, let me move the bed that I put by the portal since we're clearly not going to die right now. This
Maybe.
is the scholar's lesson. The scholar hungered for knowledge, and their only desire was to fill the world with words. They set forth with a heart brimming with endless curiosity, building great libraries, towering castles raised from the earth, their walls lined with books that held the secrets of the architects. They gathered stories, uncovered lost knowledge, and even created knowledge of their own. Their books taught others how to build iron farms, how to tend to bees, how to bring life to the architect's stories. But curiosity is a flame that does not know when to stop burning. The scholars sought to test the power of their words. They wrote stories of a secret order, a dark group sworn with diorite blades, meeting in hidden tunnels beneath the earth, conspiring against those who refused to join them. They chronicled and brought life to the dangers of the depths, of the creeping skulk that spread under the siren's power. And with ink and paper they created the first rift among the architects. Once, knowledge had been freely shared. Now, it was hoarded. Suspicion grew where trust once stood. Stubborn and unyielding, the scholar refused to be denied. What knowledge was not given, they took. They slipped through hidden tunnels, stealing what they deemed too valuable to be lost. And in their arrogance, they did not notice the division they were causing. Their library walls became lined with stolen knowledge, guarded by the very diorite followers their stories had conjured into existence. The strain among the architects deepened, none more so than with the Wanderer, whose books told of Everdale, of wolves and werewolves, of adventures unbound. To him, these stories were more than ink on a page. They were a piece of his soul. The Wanderer came to reclaim them. The scholar stood firm. Knowledge must be preserved, collected. They argued that the books were free to be read, that nothing was truly taken. The Wanderer did not agree, and when failed, he let his fury speak instead. The scholars sat amid the wreckage of their once proud library, the echoes of the Wanderer's rage still ringing in the shattered halls. And in that moment, amid the ruins of what they had built, a strange sense of relief washed over them. They were no longer bound by their own knowledge, and with this revelation their eyes opened to a far greater truth. Their world was falling apart. The architects, once the pillars of creation, had become divided, their hearts blackened by corruption, their hands tearing apart what they had once built together. A world that had thrived under unity was now unraveling, frayed by ambition, fear, and greed. And the scholar, who had only ever sought to preserve knowledge, realized they had been the first to break it. Regret settled deep within them. They vowed to restore what had been lost, to mend the architects before the damage was beyond repair. But it was too late. The world had already been doomed. The scholar knew then that they could not save what had already crumbled. But perhaps, just perhaps, they could ensure that the next cycle would not repeat their mistakes. With tattered robes and weary hands, the scholars set out on their final task, not to gather, not to take, but to warn, to leave behind a message for the architects yet to come, a warning not to let division define them, a plea not to let history repeat. I'm gonna read The Wanderer's War. The Wanderer was never meant to stay in one place. His heart belonged to the wilds, to the winding roads that stretched beyond the horizon, to the wolves that ran beside him, to the world itself. He seemed happy, free, untethered by home or ally. But in his quietest moments, when the wind died and the campfire burned low, he felt the weight of his solitude. Even with his wolves beside him, he struggled with jealousy. The other architects had towns, followers, friends, belonging. No matter how far he traveled, no matter how many stories he collected, he could never seem to find the same. So he built Everdale, a place where all were welcome, where wolves were seen as deities and guardians, a sanctuary for the restless and the lost. But even then, his heart refused to stay still. The road always called him back. And more often than not, he answered, never truly settling, no matter how much he loved Everdale. It did not fill the hole in his heart. Instead, he poured himself into his writing, chronicling his journeys, the legends of Everdale, the myths of the wolves. Each word was a piece of his soul, inked into pages meant to outlive even the architects. And then one day, his stories were stolen. The scholar, ever hunger-free for knowledge, took them, vanished into the night with books filled with the Wanderer's history. Enraged, betrayed, the Wanderer chased them across the lands. When he caught them, he tried to be civil. He tried to be kind. He offered copies of the books, diamonds, whatever the scholar wanted, anything, so long as his stories were returned. But the scholar, stubborn and unyielding, refused. Fury took hold. Even a lonely outcast was not to be trifled with. The Wanderer tore through the scholar's library, leaving destruction in his wake. Shelves toppled, ink spilled, knowledge lay in ruin as he clawed back what was rightfully his. But even as he held his books once more, the fire inside him did not fade. Jealousy, once a simmering whisper, now roared into something far greater. Why should the other architects have what he could not? Why should they stand together while he remained alone? So he declared war. The wolves became his soldiers. The wind carried his battle cries. Everdale became the heart of his campaign, its streets filled with wolves ready to fight in his name. His loneliness twisted into fury, his sorrow into vengeance, and the world burned. By the time the ashes settled, when the rivers ran dry and the mountains crumbled, the Wanderer finally understood. There was nothing left to conquer, nothing left to envy, nothing left at all. He had won his war, but nothing else. For the first time in his immortal life, he stood still. The road stretched before him, but there was nowhere left to go. Everdale, once a haven, was now a ghost town. His wolves howled not in reverence, but in mourning. The Wanderer did not weep. The emptiness in his heart would not let him. The scholar's pleas for help did not faze him. There was nothing left to save. And so, in the rubble of the world his rage had carved, he sat. With shaking hands he wrote, quietly, until the end. The Eternals Fall. The Eternal was an architect of boundless energy, their hands never still, their heart thrumming with the thrill of creation. Where others hesitated, they rushed forward, always eager, always chasing something just beyond their grasp. High above the land, they built their masterpiece, a city of floating isles, where clouds curled around grand spires and the sky shimmered with the glow of divine monuments. Each statue, each temple, each bridge was a tribute to the architects they admired. The wanderer, the siren, the cowboy, all stood immortalized, but none were honored more than the scholar. The Eternal idolized them. They saw wisdom in the scholar's pursuit, in their endless hunger for knowledge. So when the scholar extended a hand, asking for their help in recording the world's secrets, the Eternal did not hesitate. They carved history into the sky. Their monuments grew taller, more intricate, their devotion blinding them to the shadows creeping at the edges of their world. The scholar's words became stranger, their knowledge darker. Yet the Eternal, ever trusting, ever hasty, followed without question. They built as they were told, recorded what should not be recorded. And when the first cracks appeared in the sky, they dismissed them as nothing more than the shifting of the winds. Then the wanderers' war raged across the lands. The heavens trembled as the architects turned against one another. The monuments the Eternal had so lovingly crafted crumbled to dust. Their city, once untouched by the chaos below, was now caught in its grasp. Desperate, they fought to hold it together. They raced across breaking bridges, tried to mend the falling statues, tried to rewrite the ending of their story. But the weight of their own haste, their own trust, was too great. As their world shattered around them, the Eternal turned to the scholar one last time. Had it all been a mistake? Had they been nothing more than a pawn? Had they simply been too reckless to see the truth? The scholar pleaded, their voice laced with regret. They reached out once more. And despite the crumbling islands, despite everything, the Eternal reached back. Together they would try. If they could not save this world, perhaps they could save the next. Perhaps they could stop this from happening to their future selves. Perhaps this time they would not be too late. I want to read the Sylvan Silence. The Sylvan was an architect of the forest, of blooming meadows and golden hives, of soft winds that carried the scent of honey through the air. They wanted nothing more than peace, to guide gardens of wildflowers, to listen to the hum of bees as they danced between blossoms, to let the world move around them without disturbance. Beyond their groves, the world was loud, chaotic, full of gods with grand ambitions and reckless hands. But the Sylvan did not listen. It was not their concern. They kept themselves preoccupied, building a quaint little city among the trees, raising floating islands where the flowers bloomed eternally. The warnings came in the wind, whispers of war, of corruption creeping into the hearts of their fellow gods. But what was a single storm to an eternal forest? What was one fire when the rains would surely come? So they turned away. Nature always found a way, they told themselves. The world had existed before the gods and would exist long after them. Then the corruption reached the edges of their woods. The trees turned gray. The flowers withered. The roots twisted into something unnatural, writhing in the dark. The bees, their beloved bees, fell from poisoned petals, their hives growing silent. Only then did the Sylvans stir. Only then did they see. The architects had torn the world apart, and the Sylvan had let them. Their silence had been permission, their inaction a quiet betrayal. They tried to heal what was lost. They ran to the fields with handfuls of seeds, whispering desperate prayers to the ruined land. But the soil had turned to dust, the rivers to poison. No roots could take hold. No flowers would bloom. It was too late. As the last of the bees left their hive, carried away by dying winds, the Sylvan fell to their knees in the empty meadow, cradling wilted petals in trembling hands. Then the scholar came, pleading for help, to right what had been done to undo the ruin they had all allowed. The Sylvan listened, but their eyes lingered on the land, on what had once been beautiful, on what they had lost. They did not want to move on. They chose stay, to try again, to see the forest bloom once more. All right. So, the Cowboy's Folly. The cowboy had simple dreams. He wanted a town, a place of warmth and dust, where the streets bustled with folk tipping their hats and a gentle breeze. And a gentle wind. A home not just for himself, but for those who needed one. And so he rode across the newborn world, carving roads and raising buildings. Wood and stone bent to his will, forming saloons, trading posts, and ranches that stretched toward the horizon. His town was a place of light, of laughter, of order. A place where all had... Shush, you stupid alarm. Oh my gosh.
I see how it is.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry.
I'm kidding.
My alarm is your folly. All right. His town was a place of light, of laughter, of order, a place where all had a purpose and all had a home. But the cowboy was naive. He did not see the dangers lurking beyond his borders. He did not hear the whispers curling at the edges of his dreams. Then came the scholar. With silvered words and knowing eyes, the scholar shared knowledge of grander things, of legacy, of power beyond the cowboy's dusty little town. They spoke of building something greater, something eternal. And most of all, they spoke of a stone unlike any other. Diorite, they called it. A divine material, misunderstood, discarded by the unworthy. The cowboy, wide-eyed and trusting, believed them. He became a founder of their cause, spreading diorite across the land as if it was sacred. He built temples of the cursed stone, raising towering monuments in its name, declaring it the foundation of all civilization. His town, once humble and warm, became something else. The laughter faded, replaced by endless sermons of the diorite faithful. Those who questioned were cast out, for the cowboy now saw doubt as weakness. He became obsessed, convinced the stone held mighty power, convinced that through it, his town, his legacy, would stand the test of time. But time was cruel. By the time he saw his mistake, it was too late. The architects, once bound together, had splintered, their trust eroded by division. The town he had loved, his town, was ruined. The people were driven away by the strange fervor of their leader. The streets were empty, the doors locked, the windows dark. He had built his kingdom and destroyed it with the same hands. The cowboy stood at the gates of his own ruin, diorite dust clinging to his fingers, watching the world crumble beneath his feet. But he did not curse the scholar. He did not rage. He only hung his head, adjusting the brim of his hat. And then, with slow, deliberate steps, he walked away. He had no interest in hearing the scholars' pleas, their desperate words to help reverse the damage, to save their world or the next. Even the eternal, ever hopeful, could not convince him to stay. Jaded and guarded, the cowboy swore he would not be fooled again. And so, when the world fell, he let it. Okay. The siren's drowning. The siren was an architect of the depths. The darkest oceans were where they felt safe, shielded away from the other architects, as the siren didn't trust many of them. Fair.
Yeah.
They watched from the depths where the ocean ran cold and the currents whispered secrets no land dweller could hear. The scholar, the cowboy, the wanderer, all of them played their games, shaping the world with reckless hands. But the siren knew better. And so they built their kingdom where no one could reach them. Beneath the waves, where light struggled to touch, they wove fortresses of skulk and coral, trenches lined with secrets. Their magic spread through the abyss, pulling the shadows close, keeping the dangers of the world at bay. They watched. They waited. Then the wars began. The gods fought above the water, and the sky burned. The scholar's hunger for knowledge turned into something ruinous. The eternal following close behind. The cowboys' towns crumbled beneath stone. The wanderers' wolves tore through the land. The night's greed poisoned the land. The siren had always known this would happen. It was inevitable. And so they sealed themselves away. The oceans darkened. The currents grew still. Their once thriving realm became a place of silence, of ghosts. The skulk spread deeper, creeping along the seafloor like ink, consumed. No architect could be trusted. No soul could be let in. But paranoia is a prison built by one's own hands. The siren did not notice how their waters turned hostile, how their magic drowned the very creatures they once protected. They did not see that, in their fear of destruction, they had become another hand in the world's unraveling. By the time they realized, the seas were empty. The architects had fallen, one by one. The world was in ruins, and the siren was alone, floating in an ocean that no longer breathed. For the first time they wondered, had the danger been real, or had they created it themselves? But there was no one left to answer. The Knight's Hoard. The knight was an architect of iron and discipline, their armor gleaming beneath the sun, their banner flying high over the lands they swore to protect. Loyalty was their creed, and order was their purpose. But beneath the shining metal, beneath the vows of honor, there was something deeper, a hunger. They saw the world as something to be tamed, structured, and controlled. And so they built. Farms stretched for miles, pulling every valuable resource from the land. Storehouses overflowed with crops. ores, and treasures torn from the earth itself. Fences, walls, and towers rose to defend their riches. No hand but theirs would touch what they had claimed. At first, they told themselves it was for the good of all, that an architect must prepare, must gather, must own, to ensure the survival of their people. But no people came, only more land, more resources, more greed. The night worked tirelessly, building machines to harvest, mine, and hoard. Their sword, once a symbol of honor, no longer fought battles, only struck down those who dared take from their collection. Their farms grew too vast to tend, their treasures too heavy to carry. Yet still it was not enough. It would never be enough. And then the world burned. The gods waged their war. The sky split apart, and the land crumbled. The knights' hoarded riches could not stop the flood, could not hold back the ruin. The earth they had stripped bare collapsed beneath them, swallowing their fortune whole. Only then did they realize they had nothing. No army to stand beside them, no people to save, no purpose beyond the greed that had consumed them. Their hands, once strong, trembled beneath the weight of their own destruction. As the world fell, the knights stood among the wreckage of their empire, watching their treasures scatter to the depths. And for the first time, they did not reach for them. The scholar came, pleading for help, but without their wealth, the knight felt hollow, empty, nothing left to give. With weary steps, they turned away, vanishing into the ruins, and the land swallowed him whole. All right, it's the Enigmatic's Retreat. The Enigmatic was an architect of quiet comforts, a keeper of secrets nestled between warm earths and the flickering glow of candlelight. While the other architects shaped the world with ambition and power, the Enigmatic lingered in the background, content to build a sanctuary away from it all. Away from it all. They surrounded themselves with small joys, loaves of bread cooling on wooden tables, steaming cups of tea cradled in patient hands, the soft clucking of well-fed chickens. Their home was a place of untouched by the chaos. Oh, wait. Their home was a place of untouched by the chaos beyond its walls. To the world, they were an enigma, welcoming yet distant, always offering a place to rest, but never truly joining the stories unfolding beyond their doorstep. The other gods came to them at times, seeking counsel, seeking support, but the enigmatic only offered them food and riddles wrapped in soft words. Stay a while, have a meal. Is the world's weight not lighter when shared over a feast? They never took a side, never raised their voice, believing that wisdom lay in stillness, that conflict would fade if left alone. But silence is not the same as peace. As the architects waged their battles and the world cracked beneath their feet, the enigmatic did not move. Even as corruption bled into the land, as the sky darkened and the rivers ran dry, they stayed within their sanctuary, convinced that stillness would weather the storm. But in the end, no fortress is untouchable. The warmth of their halls turned cold, their gardens withered, their chickens fled into the night, their sanctuary hollowed by the very passivity they once thought was wisdom. And so they sat at their long, empty table, a host without guest, a god without purpose. It was only then, in the aching quiet, that they understood. Their refusal to act had not preserved peace. It had ensured destruction. When the scholar came, pleading for aid, the enigmatic did not hesitate this time. They rose from their seat, leaving behind the ruins of their quiet world, stepping into the unknown at last. If they could not save this world, perhaps they could help rebuild the next.